While a trade for Byron Buxton didn't happen, the Braves' interest in him at the trade deadline tells us a lot about what this offseason could look like for Alex Anthopoulos and the Braves. We'll discuss it on today's episode of Locked On Braves, so let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I'm your host, Jake Mastriani. You can follow me on social media at shortstopball. Check out the podcast there at LockedOn_Braves on X and Locked On Braves on Instagram. Make sure that you subscribe to us on YouTube if you're new with that thumbs up button. And leave me a comment down below. It does help us a lot whenever you do those things. And if you're listening on the audio side, you can help out as well. Just leave me a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Thank you so much to all my everydayers out there who continue to grind through the frustration of 2025 and listen in each and every day. This is not a postcast. I may have fooled you into thinking that. Lindsay out tonight. So we're going to be doing a regular podcast here. We're going to be talking about the Byron Buxton trade rumors, which I know Lindsay already covered on his podcast. You want to give that a listen to. We're going to talk about that. We are going to get into the Brewers series and the oh-so-close comeback on a Wednesday night. We'll get into all of that. Spencer Strider with another rough outing. We'll discuss all of that on today's episode and all the latest news. A lot of injured players for the Atlanta Braves. We got a lot of updates on them here recently. So we'll go over all of that on today's episode of Locked On Braves, which is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. I want to start out today talking about the rumor of the Braves having interest in Byron Buxton at this past trade deadline, because the report from Dan Hayes of The Athletic, I think, probably took a lot of people by surprise. Now, obviously, Byron Buxton quickly shot down any possibility of a trade. He has a no-trade clause that goes through 2026, and he already has 10-5 rights, so he can veto any trade, just like, Ozuna from the Braves. He could also, reject any type of trade offer. So that easily was, dismissed. But the fact that the Braves at least showed interest in him and that Alex Anthopoulos was checking on him, I think tells us a lot. And I want to get into that on today's episode. And look, this could have very easily been I'm going to call in, see what the offer is, and just do my due diligence. That very well could have been what happened here. And most likely that is what happened here. We know Alex is turning over every stone. He's trying his best to turn this thing around because he knows, and everybody knows, how disappointing of a season this has been. But I do think just the fact that he checked in, and Dan Hayes from The Athletic makes it seem like it was more than that, more than just a casual check-in, that there was actual interest there, I think tells us a lot about what could happen this offseason. Now, just very quickly to touch on Buxton, he's owed just a little over $15 million the next 3 years, but has some significant performance bonuses in his contract as well. And despite all the injuries that he's had, he has produced 3.4 or more FWAR in 4 of the last 5 seasons. But he's only played in over 100 games in 1 of those seasons. He's been one of the most injury-prone players in baseball. Stud when he's healthy and he's out there, but he's very rarely ever out there, which seems pretty odd that Alex Anthopoulos would even call in on a guy that has been so injured on a team that's had tons of injuries in the outfield. Well, there's been Michael Harris in the past, or Ronald. Obviously, you can't do anything about the suspension of Profar, but they've had their own share of keeping players on the field, in the outfield here. So to trade for a guy like Buxton, I think is pretty odd. But I think what this confirms for me, there's a few things that this trade interest tells me. The first one is it kind of confirms Alex Anthopoulos' comments after this past trade deadline, that their main goal at this past trade deadline was looking for talent to help them in 2026 and beyond. It wasn't so much about dumping free agents that they have now. I'm sure that was part of it, and I'm sure that they were exploring options to trade Ozuna, Iglesias. I sure hope so. But Alex said in his post-trade deadline interview that their main goal was to find help for 2026 and beyond. That was their main focus. AA also said in that conversation that many of the discussions at the trade deadline could lead to something in the offseason, which I think is very, very promising. And again, we'll see once the offseason starts, but it sounds like what this trade deadline was more about for Alex Anthopoulos was setting stuff up for the offseason. Obviously not a lot, anything really happened. Kinley's the only player that they actually got that has control beyond this year, but maybe he was able to have some conversations that he now has an idea of who he could go after in the offseason. And I think that's probably what it was, checking in on Byron Buxton. I think this also confirms for us that AA is going to be very, very active in the offseason, looking for a big piece, not just looking for supplemental pieces, not looking for reclamation projects like Jared Kelnick. I think this tells us that AA is going to be looking for a big piece. Now, he's going to try to do it as conservatively, cheaply is another word to say that, as possible. But just like with Buxton's contract, it's a very affordable contract, $15 million a year for a guy that when he plays is like one of the best in baseball. He's going to be looking for that deal. He always is, similar to Chris Sale. Chris Sale was a guy that was seen as oft injured, a contract that maybe you wanted to get rid of, and he took advantage of that and got a great deal out of it. And it feels like was kind of the same thought process in checking in on Buxton, and I'm sure that's also going to be the kind of deals that he looks for. But I think what this tells me is the conversations he had at this last trade deadline were more about what he might do in the offseason. And I think it tells me that he's going to be very active in finding a big piece for this team on the offensive side of things going forward. The other thing that this tells me is that there could be some reshuffling in the outfield. I think this was a likely situation where AA saw the potential for a great opportunity and a great deal and just went after it, not really worried about how everything would fit if he got the deal done. If you can trade for a talent like Byron Buxton, you figure out the rest. And that's most likely what the mindset was here. But this could also mean that he's going to try to move Profar this winter. And we're going to talk a lot about Profar in the second segment because he had a good series, but also we're going to talk about it on tomorrow's podcast and who he is. Did the Braves get swindled in this, or are we being too harsh on Profar? We're going to talk about that in tomorrow's episode. But this could be a sign that maybe he's going to try to move on from Profar this winter. Maybe he could actually be considering moving on from Michael Harris this winter. Maybe he's looking to deal him as well and maybe replace him with another Georgia native. Maybe that was his thought process. Could this also, and what I think is probably most likely, be a foretelling that the DH is going to be more fluid next year? That they're not going to bring back Marcell Ozuna. They're not going to try to bring in somebody that's a DH only, but instead they're going to rotate the catchers through there. They're going to give Ronald some days there. They might get Profar some days there. And if they were to acquire somebody like a Buxton, that you would give him days there as well. I think that's more likely the notion to take from this, is that it's just about acquiring talent and we'll figure out where to play him after that. And I think that's probably a good mindset to have. You think about the Josh Donaldson move. And when you already had a third baseman and moves like that, where you just figure it out, you get the talent in here and you figure it out. That kind of seems like the thought process for Alex with this potential move and checking in on Byron Buxton, but also probably the way he's going to navigate in the offseason too, of just thinking, where can I get the best deal with the most talent? And that's probably how he's going to go about it. And then you figure out the rest after that. I mean, you could get an outfielder and you could potentially move Profar to second base, which again, we'll talk about probably more on tomorrow's podcast. So my final thoughts on this trade rumor of the Braves having interest in Byron Buxton. I think this was probably just AA doing his due diligence to see if a great deal could be had here. If maybe the Twins were, they traded some really good relievers. Maybe the Twins were just looking to get out from under Byron Buxton and move on. And maybe there's a potential for a good deal there for a guy that doesn't cost too much. And when he plays, he's one of the best in baseball. And I doubt that talks ever really got that serious. But I think this does give us some insight into how aggressive Alex Anthopoulos will be this offseason to upgrade their roster. That's my hope anyway. I am very, Moises Perez says, I'm anxious already for the offseason. A part of me is too. I mean, I don't want to rush the season because while I am, a Braves fan and that the team I'm going to watch, I also love and enjoy watching other teams. I don't want to rush the baseball season. There's a lot of teams out there playing good baseball that I enjoy watching. But I'm pretty anxious about this offseason too, because I think there could be a lot of turnover. I think the coaching staff could be completely gutted and changed there. I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on this conversation here, but I posted the other day, reposting from a tweet that Grant went out. We'll talk about that in the final segment. I'm going to come back to that and save that. But just wrapping my thoughts up here on the Byron Buxton rumors, and what this tells me is that I think it's going to be in a very aggressive, exciting, hopefully offseason for the Atlanta Braves, and them trying to do a lot to retool and upgrade this roster. I still very much doubt he's going to spend big, just because it's one of those things I need to see it to believe it. But I think there's going to be at least one big blockbuster deal to bring in a huge talent to Atlanta. And this kind of gives me some hope that that's what's going to happen. All right, next we'll get into what happened in this Brewers series where the Braves got swept. There were some good things in there, including Jurickson Profar, Michael Harris, who hit a home run on Wednesday night. We'll get into all of that, and then we'll wrap things up with the news of the day, a lot of injury updates, and I'll talk about that tweet that I mentioned where the Braves are on record or on pace to win over 90-something games. How did it get to this point? We'll talk about all that here next. Today's episode is brought to you by Gameday Hue, and I'm usually wearing that hat, but I was wearing it today and left it out in the car. For Locked On Braves fans like me, this hat absolutely hits the mark. Gameday Hue makes clean, no logo gear with team-inspired colorways for every pro and college fan base. It's all about letting your colors speak for you. No giant logos, just smart, versatile style that works on game day, on the course, or anywhere in between. The hat pairs perfectly with my usual gear. It doesn't replace my team's logo stuff. It just adds to the lineup. And it's the kind of hat that reps your team without screaming it. It's subtle. And right now, as a Braves fan, you probably want to be a little subtle with what you wear out in public. But you're a true Braves fan to the core. You still want to rep the colors. This is a way to do it with a nice Gameday Hue hat. And it's not just hats either. Check out their split shade gloves made for the golf course, or the perfect gift for the fan who has everything. Right now, you can get 15% off with the code MLB15 at GamedayHue.com. That's GamedayHue.com. The code even stacks on bundle deals. So now's the time to load up. Let your colors talk, because colors speak louder than words. That's GamedayHue.com, code MLB15. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Braves your first listen of each and every day. Go check out the guys over at Locked On MLB for your second listen of the day, solely getting caught up with everything happening around Major League Baseball, and the guys at MLB Game Night bringing you the best highlights from each and every night as well. And make sure you subscribe here to Locked On Braves. We'll have 2 more episodes for you this week. I already hinted or teased that tomorrow we're going to talk about Jurickson Profar, what the Braves should do with him, what he's looked like for the Atlanta Braves. What player does he look like through his first 100+ at-bats with the Braves? Have they been swindled? We'll talk about that tomorrow. And then we'll have our mailbag episode on a Friday. So make sure you're locked in here to Locked On Braves. Well, let's get into the series with the Brewers. The Braves get swept by Milwaukee in this series. Milwaukee playing great coming in. I mentioned it. They're one of the hottest teams in baseball, one of the best teams in baseball. Before we get into the specifics, I think watching this series and watching the Brewers, and for those of you who don't know, I stepped my foot into Locked On Podcast as a Brewers host. It was the only opening at the time, and I was, granted the opportunity to be able to be a Locked On Brewers host. So I followed that team very closely for several years. It is a well-run organization. They do not spend a lot of money. They went through a managerial overhaul. They lost somebody that was very dear to the franchise, and Craig Counsell, who goes to their rival in the Cubs. And first year after that, Brewers win the division over him. Right now, they're on top of him in the division. They just won a big series against him. And I think they're just a model type of franchise right now for how you can win in a different way. And I think if you watch this offense, you watch that Brewers offense, you kind of see that. You see it's not a ton of power. And I talked about this coming in. They do a lot of the little things well. Now, to be fair, it hasn't translated to a lot of success in the postseason yet. But they do a lot of the little things really well that has made them such a consistent team and a consistent winner for so many years now, despite all the changes. I mean, they traded Corbin Burns, and the next guy steps up. And it's just nothing has really slowed them down. They lose a Willy Adames in free agency, next guy up. I think the Brewers are are a team that you really want to, it's kind of like how the Rays have been for so many years. It's a team that hasn't been a big spender, but they have just found a model that works consistently to win in the regular season. Again, hasn't turned into a lot of postseason success. Rays have made a couple of World Series appearances, but I feel like the Brewers kind of are that team right now that they just have this plan and they have this model of how to win games, and it's consistent. And so a lot of props to the Brewers and their organization. Again, they've been through a lot of changes, both managerial wise, personnel wise, and they just continue to go on chugging. And I think when you watch them play, again, there's not really one particular player that stands out. I mean, yeah, they have a William Contreras, they have a Christian Yelich, but neither one of those guys are really considered superstars at this point. I mean, Williams not having the best of years. Yelich has kind of been down dealing with those back issues for several years, but yet guys just step up. I mean, look at Isaac Collins, who killed it in this series, unfortunately, because he's one of the main competitors with Drake Baldwin for NL Rookie of the Year. You look at Andrew Vaughn that comes over and just starts destroying for them. A Bryce Terang who just does all these little things well. A Jory Ortiz that they'll get back in the Corbin deal. It's just, they just continually find pieces to make it work. So props to the Brewers. I agree. Will V says they always get bounced in the wild card. But regular season, I mean, they become a model of consistency and how to get it done, despite not having a high payroll, despite not having, the best talent in the world. And you saw it in display in the series. I mean, it was a couple of close games, but I mean, for the most part, they owned the Braves. They did all the little things well in this series to win it and got it done. But looking on the Braves side of things, Eric Fedde in game one of the series, 5 1/3 innings, 3 hits, 2 walks, 3 earned, no strikeouts, 87 pitches. Look, you really can't ask for much more than that out of Eric Fedde. Pitched into the 6th inning, gave up 3 earned. I mean, that's really what you're hoping for. It's not a terrible start, and does give you some length and keeps you in the game. Joey Wentz, 5 1/3, 7 hits, 1 walk, 5 earned, 3 strikeouts. The results certainly don't look great in that game for Joey Wentz. He gave up a lot of hard contact, but it was the weak contact on that night that really hurt him. It was that infield dribbler by Christian Yelich that really killed him. I mean, that's hit a little bit harder, and you get an out of that inning. It's a very different ball game. It's kind of crazy in that game, and I'm going to look at this with Strider too. And in tonight's game, it was very interesting as well to look at the hard contact. But in that game for Joey Wentz, the 6 hardest hit balls off of him all went for hits. All were singles except for the Collins, quote unquote triple, the Profar misplay out there. And then the weakest ball of the night was also a single, and everything else in between was an out. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I'm certainly not trying to advocate that this start by Joey Wentz was a good one, but it was also extremely close to him just giving up nothing. Like I said, the Yelich ball hit a little harder. He's out of that inning, not giving up anything. Profar makes that play and left. He doesn't give up anything. So showing Joey Wentz a little bit of grace there. Maybe it's me just trying to be positive that the Braves actually found something here. But I do think it was closer to being a really good start than it was what it looks like is a bad start. 5 earned in 5 1/3 innings. As for Strider, this just was a bad start. I mean, there's no other way to really put it for Spencer Strider. 11 hits on the night, and just a lot of hard contact. 11 hard hit balls in 4 2/3 innings. He gives up 5 runs, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts, 2 home runs on 94 pitches. His ERA shoots back up over 4. And it was just everything was getting hit hard in this game for Spencer Strider. He did get 13 whiffs on 28 swings against his slider, a 46% whiff rate. So, I mean, that's solid. That's okay. You look at the fastball average in this one, it was actually up in this start. It was 96.2 miles per hour. He hit a 98 in this one. So the fastball velocity was actually better than it's been over his last several starts. I just don't know certainly there was some mislocation in this that definitely hurt him. And I think you give a lot of credit to that Brewers lineup that, like I said, was swinging the bat really good coming in. But you look at it, I mentioned he gave up 11 hard hit balls of 17 put in play. And all of them were between a 3 and a 29-degree launch angle. That means they were squaring up some baseballs against him. You look at in contrast, you look at Jose Quintana, who also gave up 11 hard hit balls. Now, he did it over 6 innings, but the Braves had 11 hard hit balls against Jose Quintana, but almost half of them, or that's not true, 4 of them were negative degrees. And many of them weren't really good launch angles. A couple of them over 30 degrees. And it shows, one, I think there's a difference in Braves hitters and Brewers hitters. Brewers hitters able to get to the sweet spot. And some of that probably has to do a little bit more with the pitchers and the pitches that they're throwing and not being able to execute. But both pitchers give up 11 hard hit balls, but the difference in the type of contact. We talk a lot about exit velocity on here. I haven't talked as much about it this year because many of you say you don't want to hear it anymore, but it goes into the outcome. But it's not just exit velocity. It's how you're contacting the baseball and how you're squaring it up. The Bryce Terang hit, and I believe it was the second inning, is a good example of this. Bryce Terang got himself an account where he felt like he was going to get a fastball, but he didn't sell out to try to murder that fastball. It was a fastball that was up and out of the zone, and he put the barrel on it and just shot it the other way. Whereas if that was Austin Riley, let's pick on him, and Braves hitters do this, they'll get in certain counts where they're sitting on pitch. Almost every hitter does that. But the difference is that if Austin Riley is sitting on a 1-1 fastball or whatever it was, he's swinging out of his shoes to try to hit it over the fence, no matter where it is. And that's great if that fastball is middle or it's in your happy zone. That's great. But if it's not, and you're committed to swinging to this fastball, you have to have enough barrel control to know that, okay, I got the fastball I was looking for. It's not in the location I wanted it. I either got to pull off or I have to adjust my barrel to just take it where the pitch is. But instead, Braves hitters, they'll get themselves in a count where they're guessing a pitch, and they may get that pitch, but if it's not in the exact spot that they want it, it's an easy pop-up. And it's a long way of, I didn't mean to go down that much of a tangent, but I thought that was a prime example of Bryce Terang was sitting fastball. You don't hit that pitch any other way unless you're sitting fastball. But he wasn't just sitting fastball middle. He was sitting fastball wherever it was. And wherever it was, he was going to take his barrel to the baseball and shoot the pitch where it was. I mean, if that pitch was middle, he probably pulls it out for a home run. But he was prepared. He knew what pitch he was going to get. He was prepared for it, and he was prepared for wherever it was pitched. Braves hitters don't have that. Braves hitters don't do that. They'll sit on a pitch, but they'll swing the same no matter where it is. And that's been a huge frustration for me. So I didn't mean to get on too much of a soapbox there on that one, but I thought that was just a prime example that you could see in that game. And when we're talking about the difference between the Brewers and the Braves hitters, I thought that was just a great example of that. Now, some positives in this one. Eli White coming into Wednesday, he had accounted for 6 of the team's last 7 runs batted in. In fact, and also, and you saw in this one too, with the 2 home runs that the Braves got of the 3 runs scored coming into Wednesday, 6 of their last 7 runs scored over the past 4 games were via home runs, 3 of them by Eli White, the other by Profar, who then hit another one on Wednesday, and 2 of their 3 runs on Wednesday. So if I can do math correctly, 8 of their last 10 runs scored have been on home runs. And so it feels like it's back to an offense that can only score one way. And they're hitting a lot of solo home runs because nobody's on base, and they're just not hitting enough of them. So just very frustrating. I was supposed to be positive here, but just another frustrating kind of performance from the Braves offense, and still not really figuring out, I think, who they are or what they're going to be. Unfortunately, Eli White, he does get another RBI in this one. He goes over 4, getting moved to the leadoff spot, but does pick up an RBI. And then Michael Harris, he has 4 hard hit balls on the night. One of them leads the yard, brings the game within 1 run in the 9th inning. So good to see that from Michael Harris. Nacho had a hit in this one, including a hard hit at that. So that was good to see. Sean Murphy had a really good night, throwing out a couple of base runners. Also had an RBI earlier in this game as well. So good stuff. I guess they scored. Sorry, my math is not good. 8 of their last 11. They had 2 runs they scored on Wednesday night that weren't via the home run. You had the RBI hit from Sean Murphy, and then the force out from Eli White to score a run. But there was some good stuff in this series. Eli White, Profar, who again we'll talk about more tomorrow. I think had some good series. Michael Harris with some good contact in this one after some rough at-bats, I thought, on Tuesday's game. So good to see that for Michael Harris making that adjustment. But let me know your thoughts on this series from the Atlanta Braves. Let me know your thoughts on the swings that you see. Did you see something in that Brewers team that you wish the Braves could emulate? Because I think it's a very good game plan for a consistent offense. They got the speed. They do the little things. They get the sack hits, the sack flies. They do everything kind of the right way offensively, and I wish the Braves were more like that. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Next, we'll get into some of the news on Acuna, Grant Holmes, Chris Sale, Swellenbach, Lopez. We'll get into all of that here next. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without all the stress. I'm getting ready to, go on another vacation. Me and my wife have our 10-year anniversary coming up. We got a big vacation plan, and we can do that because we're able to set goals and manage our money through Monarch Money. And you can take control of your finances too with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Braves. Lindsay out tonight. I believe we'll be back together on a Thursday to recap that Marlins, beginning of that Marlins series. Big Marlins series coming up is I was going to say the battle for third place, but then I looked at the standings and the Braves are like 10 games back to the Marlins. So I don't know that it'll be much of a battle, but if they were going to make up some ground for that third place in the NL East, now would be the time to do it. So we'll be back the rest of the weekend to recap those games, including the doubleheader on Saturday, which comes with a little bit of excitement. It's going to be the first female umpire will be part of that Marlins Braves doubleheader. I should say first female umpire at the major league level. So that'll be really cool. Awesome for Jen Powell. See her on Saturday as part of that series. Now, some news updates for the Atlanta Braves, some injury updates. Acuna is apparently doing some work on the field already. He's hit in the batting cage, so it sounds like he's progressing, but obviously they're not going to rush him. But signs are good that we will at least see Acuna back at some point this year, and that'll be exciting. We need every reason we can get to tune into these games right now. Grant Holmes decided to forego surgery and will try to rehab the UCL. Now, this does not mean that he will not ultimately have surgery, but it just kind of makes sense because of where we are at in the season, that if he had surgery now, whether he has surgery now or he has surgery in the offseason, he's going to miss all of 2026 anyway. So might as well try to rehab it at the moment. I think he said the plan is to just see how he feels in the offseason and then just kind of go from there. And it feels like you have to have surgery, then it will at that point. So like I said, it's just at the point of the year where I think this kind of makes sense, because if he has surgery now or if he has it 2 months from now, he's still going to miss 2026 anyway. Chris Sale is beginning to ramp up his process for a return. He threw a bullpen session over the weekend. He's going to throw a live BP batting practice session on Thursday. Snit said he'll likely need at least one rehab start, so we could be a couple of weeks away from seeing Chris Sale, which would be good. Again, we need all the excuses we can get to tune in and have something to cheer for with this team. It'd be great to see Chris Sale back out there. Unfortunately, Spencer Schwellenbach is likely done for the year. He hasn't even ramped activity back up, and it sounds like he could miss the rest of the season. Ronaldo Lopez is playing catch, though, and there's still a chance we could see him this year. I'm interested in all of these, certainly, but Ronaldo Lopez might be the one that interests me the most, because I want to know what his role is going forward on this team. I'm sure, especially with the injuries the Braves already have, they're going to try to stretch him back out as a starter. But with the losses in the bullpen and with the need already to find some bullpen arms in the offseason, including a closer that you're going to have to find, I'm really curious to see what they do with Ronaldo Lopez. And shoulder injuries are no joke, and they're hard to come back from. And I just wonder if they just go ahead and make that transition, say, hey, we're going to need a dominant setup reliever we feel like you can do that. And because of your injury that you have, that might be the best plan for you. So I'm curious to see if Lopez does come back this year. I'm sure he's not going to throw a lot of innings anyway, but which way do they use him? I think will be very interesting to see. And then I kind of teased at this earlier, and we'll probably talk about it more in an episode next week or as we get further on into the season. But Grant McCauley, old Postcast partner, posted a tweet, the Braves on pace to win or to lose 94 games so far this season. That was coming into Wednesday night. I guess it's worse than that now. And talked about, how many times the Braves have lost 100 games and all of that. And it just got me thinking, and I posted this myself, quote tweeting Grant, it's hard to believe how far this team has fallen and how bad they are. Not just that they're having a bad season, like a bad season for this Braves team, and forget all the injuries. A bad season for this Braves team should be a team that's around 500. Not a team on pace to lose 90 plus games and might approach losing 100 games. For things to go that poorly, something is fundamentally wrong with this team, whatever that is. And I got a lot of great suggestions from you. And like I said, we'll do a full deep dive podcast on that at some point. But something has to fundamentally be wrong with this team for things to be this bad. You cannot just blame it all on injuries. Everybody's dealing with injuries, especially on the pitching side. Even the players who are supposed to be good are not playing up to their level that they played to in the past. Something's fundamentally wrong, whether it's the coaching. Again, a lot of good suggestions and ideas that we'll talk about in a future podcast, but it just got me thinking, this team has fallen so far. I never in a million years would have imagined that this team, with all the talent that it has, and yes, I still believe there's a lot of talent on this team, could fall to this level, this low. And it re-emphasizes the fact for me that something's fundamentally wrong with this team, and taking things full circle to where we started on this podcast. It also reinforces to me that something dramatic has to happen this offseason. Whether it is, a full shift in coaching changes, whether it is shaking up personnel, something dramatic has to take place this offseason, because for this team to fall this low, something's fundamentally wrong with the system and what is happening right now. So hate to leave you on so much of a downer here. I am curious to see if an announcement comes pretty soon about Brian Snitker, this being his last ride. Maybe they're waiting till the final month. I don't know. Maybe we'll get the post that says he's coming back for a year, and we'll come on here and we'll have an outrageous podcast. But I would not be surprised if we get that announcement soon, just to go ahead and get out in front of it, and so the Braves can officially begin that search. But let me know your thoughts on that in the comments section below as well. If you haven't already, hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button, and leave me a comment down below. Make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast wherever you get your podcast, and we will talk to you next.